River Phoenix, remembered today for his breathtaking performances in films like Stand By Me and My Own Private Idaho, was no ordinary Hollywood hopeful. He was both an incandescent talent and an unguarded soul, juggling the weight of sudden fame with a profound desire to better the world. Yet behind those earnest eyes lay haunting insecurities, a tangled family background, and the unrelenting pressures of an industry that catapults the young to stardom without always providing them the means to navigate it. By the time he collapsed on a cold Los Angeles sidewalk in October 1993, River Phoenix had already secured a place in cinematic history, but he also left behind a profound cautionary tale about innocence lost. River Jude Bottom was born on August 23, 1970, in Madras, Oregon, to John Lee Bottom and Arlen Dunetz. The family would later adopt the surname Phoenix, symbolizing rebirth. His parents were spiritual seekers who joined the Children of God, a controversial religious movement. From a very young age, River and his siblings lived a nomadic life, traveling across South America under the movement's auspices. Daily existence meant cramped living conditions, street performances to earn meager funds, and the swirling fervor of a group that attracted equally fervent critics. While there was no shortage of love within the Phoenix household, the children's education was irregular, supplemented by informal teachings, and the spiritual focus championed by their parents. Even in his earliest memories, River was drawn to music and drama. He and his sister Rain performed impromptu songs in Caracas, Venezuela, busking on sidewalks for change. Their parents later grew disenchanted with the Children of God, claiming the group's increasingly extreme doctrines clashed with their beliefs. They fled and returned to the United States in the late 1970s, determined to rebuild a life on their own terms. Struggling to find stable work, the family took refuge in an uncle's Florida home. Here, River discovered that his relentless need to sing and act could be a real avenue for the family's livelihood. Despite being impoverished, the Phoenix children had a remarkable zest for entertaining. River, in particular, was an irrepressible spirit, often teaching himself guitar chords, scribbling stories, and delivering mini performances for neighbors. That same unstoppable creativity did not blind him to the family's hardships. John and Arlen took odd jobs. The children wore secondhand clothes and meatless meals were the norm, given both financial constraints and the family's devout vegan principles. River felt an unspoken responsibility to lighten everyone's burdens. At times he confided to friends that being the eldest son in such circumstances made him grow up too fast. Yet those years, sweltering Florida summers, crowded bedrooms, and jam sessions with siblings also forged the values he held dear: environmentalism, empathy for the marginalized, and a dedication to authenticity. In the early 1980s, the family moved to Los Angeles, hoping to land opportunities in commercials or minor acting gigs. River's unusual magnetism and sincerity landed him a TV spot almost immediately. Casting directors noticed that, though untrained, he possessed a haunting emotional range and an unmistakable presence. The tide turned when he booked roles in TV projects like Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, 1982, swiftly showcasing a talent far beyond typical child actor cuteness. He wasn't simply reciting lines, he was living each moment, unafraid to tap into vulnerability. His first seismic career milestone arrived with Rob Reiner's Stand By Me, 1986, a coming-of-age drama that cast him as Chris Chambers, a sensitive, troubled boy seeking both acceptance and redemption. While the film's ensemble impressed critics, it was Phoenix's heartbreakingly earnest performance that shone brightest. He poured his own emotional scars into the role, recalling times he felt inadequate or yearned for stability. Audiences and critics alike were stunned by his ability to convey raw pain and vulnerability at just 15. Publicly, he brushed off compliments with a shy grin, but privately, he wrestled with the disorientation of overnight fame. That swirl of attention intensified the sense that he had to be the family's provider, yet also ignited an anxiety about how to stay real in an industry that glamorized illusions. A lesser-known anecdote from that period centers on a conversation he had with co-star Will Wheaton. According to Wheaton, River once confided his fear that fame might warp his moral compass. He spoke of wanting to stay connected to nature, to animals, and to philanthropic causes. Will later recalled how earnest and intense River was even as a teen, rare traits among young actors enamored with the spotlight. Instead of rushing to get a fancy car, River spent his earnings supporting his family, buying land in Florida for them to live on communally, and donating to environmental groups. As the 1980s progressed, Phoenix's star rose exponentially. He nabbed roles in more ambitious projects, including The Mosquito Coast, 1986, alongside Harrison Ford, where he played a boy witnessing his father's descent into obsession. Critics praised the sensitivity he brought, leading to widespread buzz about him as Hollywood's next great actor. His peers marveled at his on-set dedication. He'd meticulously prepare for roles by interviewing real-life people who mirrored his character's struggles, or by immersing himself in relevant music, books, and philosophies. Such immersive behavior, however, took an emotional toll. He confessed to a friend that slipping into intense roles sometimes blurred the line between reality and fiction, leaving him mentally drained. In 1988, he starred in Running on Empty, portraying a teenager born to fugitive radicals who yearn for a normal life. That performance earned him an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor at the age of 18. Industry observers recognized that he was a generational talent, someone capable of piercing emotional depths, reminiscent of James Dean or Montgomery Clift. Yet an increasing sense of pressure gnawed at him. Paparazzi trailed him at every turn. Fans clamored for a piece of his time, and producers pitched him big-budget blockbusters. River was uncertain how to balance the cautious activism he cherished with the demands of Hollywood's corporate machinery. He found a measure of solace in music. Forming the band Alika's Attic with his sister Rain, Phoenix poured his restless spirit into songwriting, weaving environmental and social themes into his lyrics. He also championed veganism publicly, using interviews to denounce factory farming. The philanthropic dimension of his life, raising funds for environmental causes, advocating for indigenous rights, set him apart from most young stars. But some colleagues found him almost too earnest, too intense. Rumors circulated that he had little tolerance for industry phoniness. One lesser-known event underlines his moral convictions. He reportedly walked off a set when he realized the production was being funded by a company involved in exploitative labor practices, only returning after producers addressed his concerns. That unwavering sense of ethics was both admired and resented. Some saw him as a moral crusader who threatened the comfortable illusions of show business. Despite these convictions, the tide of fame proved relentless. By his late teens and early 20s, Phoenix began experimenting with substances. Initially, friends assumed he might indulge only casually, but as he faced the existential weight of supporting his family, preserving the planet, and maintaining an untainted soul in Hollywood, cracks began to appear. Unbeknownst to many, he struggled with crippling anxiety. While he distanced himself from the wild partying that ensnared other young actors, the lure of a quick chemical escape from relentless pressure eventually drew him in. Throughout 1991 and 1992, close friends and family noticed he was increasingly withdrawn at times, then rhapsodic about new causes at others, swings that revealed deep emotional turmoil. My Own Private Idaho, 1991, became a defining moment. In Gus Van Sant's daring indie drama, Phoenix played Mike, a narcoleptic street hustler looking for love and belonging. The role demanded searing vulnerability and courage to portray taboo elements, prostitution, drug use, same-sex intimacy, in an era when mainstream cinema rarely delved so explicitly into queer narratives. Phoenix collaborated intensively with Van Sant, helping to shape the script's authenticity. On screen, he was mesmerizing. Critics hailed the performance as his bravest yet. Off screen, though, the role's demands unsettled him profoundly. He immersed himself in the life experiences of marginalized youth, forging connections with real street kids. Their stories of addiction and hopelessness left him shaken. According to a friend, he confided that playing Mike had awakened latent fears in him, that he might be teetering on a personal precipice akin to the fragile existence of his character. The final year of his life found Phoenix oscillating between multiple film projects and a renewed focus on music. He'd read scripts that didn't excite him, turning them down to champion smaller, more authentic stories. At the same time, rumors about drug usage grew louder, especially in certain Hollywood circles. Always protective of his image, he insisted his real high came from activism and creativity. But close associates remember episodes where he appeared groggy or uncharacteristically short-tempered. Some who witnessed these changes gently tried to intervene, but Phoenix, known for his fiercely independent streak, either deflected or promised he was fine. As October 1993 rolled around, he was rumored to be finalizing negotiations for a major film that might catapult him further into mainstream stardom. Yet inside, he was emotionally raw. Eyewitnesses later reported that during those last weeks, he occasionally seemed haunted, as though carrying a deep personal conflict he couldn't articulate. One night, he'd be jamming on guitar, passionately discussing new philanthropic ventures. The next, he might vanish from social gatherings early, looking pale and depleted. His younger siblings, by then forging their own careers, expressed concern but felt powerless against an industry that demanded constant momentum. In the late hours of October 30th, 1993, Phoenix arrived at the Viper Room, a West Hollywood nightclub partly owned by actor Johnny Depp. The plan was to unwind with friends and possibly join the stage for an impromptu musical jam. What transpired became one of the most devastating episodes in Hollywood lore. Witnesses recalled Phoenix seemed anxious, though still polite, chatting briefly with fans, hugging acquaintances. At some point, he ingested a lethal mixture of drugs, believed to be heroin combined with cocaine, though exact details remain partly speculative. Around 1 a.m. on October 31st, he staggered outside, convulsed on the sidewalk, and collapsed. Frantic 911 calls from his brother Joaquin captured the desperation of that moment. By the time paramedics arrived, Phoenix was barely clinging to life. He was rushed to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, where doctors fought to revive him. Their efforts failed. River Phoenix was pronounced dead in the early hours of Halloween at just 23 years old. News of his passing delivered a profound shock. He had been poised to become one of the greatest actors of his generation, carrying the promise of social activism within the bright sheen of Hollywood. Tributes poured in from luminaries like Harrison Ford, who described Phoenix as an old soul with a breathtaking future. Mourners flooded the Viper Room area with flowers, candles, and handwritten notes, turning the venue into a spontaneous memorial. The cause of death, acute multiple drug intoxication, ignited media debates about drug culture among young Hollywood celebrities. Some cynically painted him as just another star, consumed by the same vices he publicly denounced. Others, especially those who knew him intimately, insisted his final meltdown was a tragic detour in an otherwise principled life. Inevitably, controversies and debates sprouted. Journalists questioned whether he had been secretly addicted or if this was a one-off experiment gone wrong. Friends pointed to an overworked schedule, personal heartbreaks, and the burdens of supporting an extended family. Historians of film and society weighed in, discussing how the 1980s moral landscape, where celebrity activism was often overshadowed by the allure of wealth, might have contributed to his conflicting desires. Even decades later, River Phoenix's life and death hold tremendous emotional and historical weight. He arrived at a moment when film was transitioning from the bombastic blockbusters of the 1980s to more introspective, raw storytelling in the 1990s. His roles heralded that shift, fusing art house sensitivity with mainstream appeal. And now, I ask you to hold River Phoenix's story in your heart, cherishing the artistry he left behind, and acknowledging the frailty that cut short his bright promise. Let it move us to show compassion for those who carry unspoken burdens, to applaud not just talent, but the complicated human being behind it, and to recognize that even the most impassioned spirits can be undone by silent battles. May his memory spur us to nurture a world where gifts like his can flourish without succumbing to the demands of an unforgiving spotlight.